and welcome back to our second episode of Between the Ficuses. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Bernazian. I'm joined with my two buddies over here, Sean Grassi and Brian Atkinson. Guys, how we doing today?
Doing well. Can't complain. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. How about you, Sean?
I'm doing well. Just shot in the strike zone with John the Winner Flynn.
There you go, baby. It's a great show. Love watching it. It's going to take off. It really is. I can already feel it. We have a lot of great sports to talk to you about today. And, guys, let's get right into it. We're going to start talking college football first. We had a great game last weekend with Louisville-Clemson, with Clemson, not destroying, but beating Louisville pretty handedly against a very, very good Lamar Jackson. What did you guys think of that game?
I honestly thought, wow, look at Clemson. This is supposed to be the playoff team that could win it all, but look at Louisville. Louisville shocked people, and Lamar Jackson didn't lose any of that Heisman credibility.
No, he didn't lose any of that Heisman credibility, but you got to look at it from the front seven standpoint. Clemson dominated the whole game at the line of scrimmage, and when it comes down to it, it's whoever wins in the trenches is going to win a game between those kind of caliber teams in college football. And Clemson has the better line on both parts. I think that's why they came away with the win.
They're saying, Lamar Jackson is a very, very favorite to win the Heisman this year. With this loss, do you guys think that it hurts his chances at all?
I don't, because he put up a strong performance against Clemson. A great defense who's been producing great cornerbacks and defensive backs alike, and good front seven guys too. I don't see that diminishing at all. If anything, it improves, especially against a Christian McCaffrey who is yet to score a touchdown on the road.
Yeah, Clemson's front seven. They had two DNs last year going the first 3 rounds.
Yeah.
They're awesome, but there's been a bunch of Heismans that lost games and wound up winning it. Johnny Manziel lost 2 games his year.
I think so too. Yeah.
Derrick Henry, he lost a game last year. I believe Alabama lost a game.
So,
yeah,
you're right.
So you can lose a game or two and still win it. As long as you perform week in and week out, he should be fine.
Well, we've seen some great things in college football so far, and next week we have 2 huge games. We have number 1 Alabama against number 16 Arkansas. Guys, this is a pretty good team, an SEC battle. Number 1 Alabama, who we all know, Nick Saban, when he gets in that zone, he's in that zone and rarely comes out of it. And then we have an Arkansas team, which is a bit of a surprise this year. Where do you guys see this game going?
Being that this is in Arkansas, it will be surprising to see how Arkansas will handle the lights pressure and see how they handle the Alabama team. No doubt about it, I can see Alabama winning, but at the same time, I'm not going to be surprised if Arkansas somehow shocks them and pulls maybe a Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, I'm not going to be shocked at all if Arkansas pulls away with this. The last couple of weeks, Alabama's been starting off very slow in the first quarter.
Shaky.
Very, very slow, very shaky. They were only up 6-3 at the end of the first quarter last week against a good Kentucky team. They're not great. They're not Arkansas.
Great team, but yeah,
but once Arkansas, if they can sling that ball around early and efficiently, I think they have a chance if they can build it up to the fourth quarter. I think they have a shot.
Yeah. 2 other teams that had huge games this week were Stanford, who took on Washington and absolutely got demolished by Washington, 44-6. Where do you see these guys heading into their games after this last game?
In terms of Christian McCaffrey, he needs to figure out quick how to get into pay dirt for the away games, because Stanford is going to need him, because they don't have a Kevin Hogan. They don't have wideouts. They need Christian McCaffrey to step it up when on the road and get into pay dirt.
Yeah, I don't think Stanford, their playoff chances are over now, obviously. You go to 15 midway through the season, you're not making it back up to the top 4, especially with their schedule. McCaffrey needs to find a way into the end zone on away games. Their defense needs to pick it up as well. 44 points to Washington. That's a lot for 2 top 10 teams.
And what's interesting is, how about this Washington team that really kind of came out of nowhere and is now actually tearing up college football?
It's surprising, considering they're now ranked 5th in the country.
Do you see them being a possible playoff contending team?
If they get shockers, if they can get some shockers and some help in the outside world, yeah, I could see them going into the playoffs and be a shocker and represent the Pac-12.
I 100% think they're going to win out. Their front seven's gritty. They get after it. They held McCaffrey to 49 yards too, so they're going to come downhill and make some hits. I think one of these top 4 teams are going to lose eventually. Clemson, they have a hard schedule. Alabama, SEC schedule. Everyone else in there, Ohio State, they have a good schedule. So if one of those teams lose, they can easily move right up in.
Well, I'll tell you right now, it's been a wild college football season so far, and I'm sure it's not going to stop anytime soon. Moving on now to the NBA, huge story for us Sixers fans who can't really seem to catch a break. Ben Simmons has injured his ankle. He's had surgery on it, but he's out indefinitely. This just completely pummels all the hype that was built throughout the offseason. You know, Gus, the Sixers getting the number 1 overall pick and us building a dynasty and building a team over Ben Simmons, and now we find out that we're not going to be able to see him for quite some time. What does this mean for us Sixers?
For Sixer fans, I guess you just have to wait a little bit longer because we saw this happen with Joel Embiid when he needed foot surgery twice. So, at the same time, if you're destined for glory, you might have to wait some time. So it's going to be good to see what they can do while Ben Simmons is recovering and try to establish good chemistry with everyone that's there. And then when Ben Simmons comes in next year, definitely watch out for the Sixers.
Well, Ben Simmons will be back in January, they reported, but I think this is a blessing in disguise for the Sixers, to be honest.
Really?
You got Darius Saric coming in. He was going to start behind Simmons at the 4. If Saric can play well, they can move Simmons to where they want to play him at the 3. So if Saric can play well these first 2 months in the season, Simmons can come back at the 3, and Sixers have their 3, 4, and 5 of the future.
Yeah, when you look at it, Dario also didn't play very bad in the playoffs. He actually played pretty well for us in the the Olympics.
Yeah.
Played pretty well for his home team. And,
Croatia, yeah.
You know, so
this could be a blessing for the Sixers. Just let Simmons wait a little, have Saric take over the reins at the 4. He comes back, he goes to the 3, Covington to the 2. And, you know, you have veterans at the point guard position. So this could be good.
It should be interesting. And, you know, it's another positive for the Sixers. We finally get to see Joel Embiid, who we have been waiting for now for 2 years. And, guys, he looks monstrous.
Yeah, if you look at this picture of
him holding the basketball,
his hands over that ball is insane. It looks like a golf ball.
It looks ridiculous. Like, you think of big guys that came out of college. I would love to see if Joel Embiid, being out for 2 years with the foot problems, I would love to see him come in with a vengeance and kind of play like the young Shaq.
Yeah. Well, other stories in the NBA, we have J.R. Smith, who has apparently not had been able to sign a contract and reach a deal with the Cavaliers. What does this mean for J.R.'s future in Cleveland? Is he done? Does he get a contract? What happens?
I don't think he's done. He exercised out of his option for $5 million this year, and he wants $45 million guaranteed. The team just offered him $42. I don't know how contracts are going. LeBron's a huge fan of JR, so hopefully they can work something out. Because if LeBron wants JR, the Cavs are going to get JR. It's a matter of when.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for Cleveland not to say, okay, we'll either come up a little bit, or if JR will say, okay, I want a championship, I want more, I'll come down a bit. Because it's going to be hard trying to say, okay, J.R. Smith, if you're not going to come, we're going to find someone else to replace you, and maybe you'll go back to New York with Derrick Rose, Melo, and Jakeem Noah.
All right, well, as we know, the NBA seems to really be heating up already, and the season hasn't even started. And, things should get interesting as the season rolls closer and closer. Moving on to the NFL, we have a lot of great things to talk about in the NFL, some fantasy football. But let's get started with our game last night. We had the Minnesota Vikings taking on the New York Giants, and I don't know about you guys, but the Giants just looked a little flat. What do you guys think?
I didn't think the Giants played well at all, considering the offensive line, who needs to be protecting Eli Manning and providing a run game for when Rashad Jennings comes back, needs to keep up a good game, and yet they blew it 2 weeks in a row. And not to mention the problems that OBJ is seeming to develop right here.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Giants fan, but Eli Manning didn't look like Eli Manning last night. He threw the ball in the dirt anytime someone came within 5 yards of him. He looked frantic. He was panicking in the pocket. He just didn't look like himself. They couldn't develop a run game. Odell Beckham, with the distraction he keeps bringing on, had a game misconduct early in the game with an incident with Xavier Rhodes. They just need to figure out that whole situation in New York. It's a mess.
But you guys can't disagree when you say that Sam Bradford, who the Eagles traded right before the season started for Carson Wentz to start week 1, does not look bad. When you look at it, Carson Wentz has as many interceptions as Sam Bradford, which is a big flat goose egg 0. Sam Bradford looks impressive, guys.
He does look impressive, but that also helps that who's the offensive coordinator for for Vikings? Isn't it the 2013 to 2015 offensive coordinator for the Eagles? That's helping right there at least, especially in terms of like having Kyle Rudolph get used to Bradford, having him get worked with Bradford and helping him to make smart throws.
Yeah, it's a big help having Pat Shermer from the Eagles going over to Minnesota being their tight ends coach. He's actually from my hometown. It's pretty cool.
Is he really?
Pat Shermer, yeah,
That's awesome.
Simmonds, New Jersey. He's a cool dude. He's moved over to Minnesota to get that tight end position, that connection with Bradford. He was over there in St. Louis with Bradford as well, so they have a tight bond. But I expect this from Bradford. I expected this in Philadelphia with him. He's an accurate passer. He doesn't really take the deep ball shots. He takes what the defense gives him, but if he could have just had a good line last year in Philadelphia and stay healthy, this is Sam Bradford. He was the number one pick for a reason.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, for all of us, we all know that fantasy was a very interesting week for us all. If you had Julio Jones or Matt Ryan, oh boy, you were probably sitting pretty. I mean, I know I got smoked pretty heavily in all my leagues. I had A.J. Green, fortunately, but it did not seem to help me. How did you guys do this week in fantasy?
I did terrible considering my quarterback that I had Cam Newton. Cam did not do well at all. Fortunately, Jordan Reed picked it up and got 2 touchdowns. But overall, it was not a good week. I could have had a better week with who I had.
Yeah, I had started Blake Bortles this week. He didn't do too bad, but
Didn't do too bad.
he lit it up in the fourth quarter, kind of that Robinson touchdown,
Right.
to cut back all the way.
Right.
That helped out. I won, got the dub. My opponent, he had Aaron Rodgers on a bye week, so that kind of helped.
There you go.
So
Well,
I came away with the win.
came away with the win, and that's all important. I guess, Sean, for me and you, we should have listened to our buddy Kale Kitchen, man. Which brings us to our next segment. This is a new segment here on Between the Ficus. It's called Kale's Corner. Kale is a master and a professional master at knowing all things fantasy football. And we're going to take it over to his corner right now, where we're going to talk a little bit more in fantasy. Kale, take it over to you, buddy.
Thanks, Ryan. You startled me there. I was just having a sip of my morning coffee. Hi, folks. Welcome to Kale's Corner. This week, I'm going to talk about my predictions for fantasy football for this upcoming weekend. First, I'll give you my 5 must-start players. Up first, Derek Carr, the quarterback of the Oakland Raiders versus the Chargers this week. Next, the running back Todd Gurley from the Los Angeles Rams. Kelvin Benjamin of the Panthers versus the Bucs this week. Delaney Walker from the Tennessee Titans. And finally, the Steelers defense versus the Jets. Up next, I'll do my 5 must-sit players for the week, starting with quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, Matt Ryan versus the Broncos. Even though he's coming off a monstrous week, the Broncos defense is way too stout, and they will shut down the Atlanta Falcons offense. Up next, Ryan Matthews, running back of the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Detroit Lions. Next, Will Fuller of the Houston Texans. He's been a rookie sensation so far, but I'm sensing a quiet week to come up for him. My last 2 picks are tight end Jason Witten of the Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans defense. For the next portion, I'll give you my 3 studs and duds from this past weekend in fantasy football. Starting with the studs, we'll go with Ben Roethlisberger, quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Julio Jones, wide receiver of the Atlanta Falcons, who had a monstrous game this weekend. And finally, DeMarco Murray, running back of the Tennessee Titans. Next, my duds from the past weekend, LeGarrette Blount, Jeremy Hill, and Travis Benjamin. Finally, I'll give you my waiver wire pickups for this week. It's a deep week for wide receivers, starting off with Dorrell Green Beckham from the Philadelphia Eagles and Adam Thielen of the Minnesota Vikings. This concludes this week's segment of Kale's Corner. Back to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Kale. You sure look comfy over there, buddy. Moving on, we're going to do a little bit of NFL predictions on this week. We got a lot of really good games coming up this week, and we're going to start with, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles at the Detroit Lions. You have the Philadelphia Eagles 3-0 coming off a bye. You have Carson Wentz, who is on fire right now, rookie sensation, going up against a really injured and battered Detroit team. What do you think, guys?
I wouldn't be surprised if Carson Wentz threw 4 touchdowns. Because you look at that Lions defense, yeah, you played a Chicago Bears team. Right now, the Chicago players are looking like Cleveland. They just happen to have a couple of wins under them, or maybe even just 1. It's still more than Cleveland, but still. You're playing a Detroit team that's not going to do well against a high-flying Eagles offense, a hard-hitting Eagles defense, and a surprise special teams that could come in.
I don't think the Eagles should take this game lightly at all. We came into Ford Field last year and took the L.
Big time, too.
Big time, too, yeah.
Big time L.
A couple of these guys know each other. I worked down at local fitness in Ocean City with Eric Ebron, Vinny Carey, a couple of other Eagles were there. They have a close connection, so it's going to be tense on the field between those guys, a lot of bragging rights. I expect it to be a good game. I expect Carson Wentz to dissect that Lions defense, and we should take care of him, but I wouldn't take it for granted.
I think you're not going to tell me that a guy who gets caught looking at game film while he's on date nights with his girlfriend, you give that man a week off to prepare for a Lions team, there's not a shot.
Yeah.
And the Eagles are coming, and they're coming fast. Another game we had that we thought was interesting, we thought we'd bring up, is the Redskins at the Ravens. You have the Redskins who are doing okay this year. You know, they've had their ups and they've had their downs against a Ravens team that really got upset this week by the Raiders. Who do you guys have this week?
I'm going with the upset of the week. I'll say my Washington Redskins find a way against Baltimore because you know Washington, once they get that gear going of they're around 500, they'll start to find their ways to win, and they'll give Kirk Cousins in the city of D.C. to start saying, you like that.
I think you're sadly mistaken. I think the linebackers on that Baltimore team are too athletic. I think they're going to be able to hold Jordan Reed, unlike last week. The team they played couldn't do that. Secondary's good. Norman, he's going to have Steve Smith. Steve Smith will still get the yards, maybe not the touchdown.
He brings the veteran.
But you still got Brashard Perriman over there, and they just got rid of their running back for set, but they got weapons on that team, and Joe Flacco has a Super Bowl under his belt. I think they're going to take care of the Redskins.
But you can't forget that passing offense, though, for the Redskins because they let that passing defense looking in Baltimore. They let up a Michael Crabtree who's just now found a resurgence to
I
get
wouldn't
3
say he
touchdowns.
just now found a resurgence. He's
Yeah,
always been good.
I would say he's been pretty consistent
Yeah,
throughout his career.
And they also have Walford at tight end, Latavius Murray, Amari Cooper, and athletic Derek Carr is much more athletic and can read defenses better than Kirk Cousins. I don't know. I just don't think the Redskins got it.
Well, it doesn't help when the coach calls passing plays in the red zone when you need to hand off the ball to
Yeah.
the running back.
Yeah.
I think you guys got a problem.
Yeah, that's a Gruden problem right there.
That's a long Washington problem.
Moving on to what we think is our game of the week, we have, we have the Atlanta Falcons at the Denver Broncos. Now, both teams are coming off an electric week. Although you have Trevor Siemian going down, you have your boy in Paxton Lynch, but you're coming off a Falcons team with Matt Ryan, who threw for 503 yards and hooked up with Julio Jones most of the time, who received for 300 yards. What do you think in this one, guys?
I'm going to be watching very closely Julio Jones versus Akeem Talib because that's going to be the matchup that everyone's going to be looking at, and I want to see how Julio will pick up that second week in a row and see how he will compare last week, who just ran wild on the Panthers, and see if he can bring that to mile high. Maybe get 150 or maybe even break over 200 yards and break the spirit of Talib.
I don't think he needs a big day to win this game. Talib is vulnerable. He let up almost 200 yards last year to Antonio Brown. Julio Jones had a 100-yard game against him last year. I think what the Falcons need to do to win this game is get 150 rushing yards. If they can run the ball for over 150 yards, they can win this game. Simeon's coming back with that shoulder injury. They're going to have to rely on C.J. Anderson. I think the Falcons might be able to stop the unbeaten Broncos. Might be able to do it.
And it's going to be a very interesting game, and I can't wait to watch that. That's my game of the week, personally. And then we have a struggling Giants on prime time against a Packers team that is coming off a bye. Who do you have in this one, guys? I think it seems a little lopsided, thinking because Aaron Rodgers is Mr. Cool, of course, and you have a struggling Giants defense. Who takes this game?
I'm looking at it as the Packers defense being in Lambeau. They'll find a way to make Eli uncomfortable because Eli, I personally compare him to Corey Crawford because you've got the rings, but you've also got a very big roller coaster that you constantly ride on.
Yeah, I think primetime game, another big night for Odell to be on the spotlight. Shields, cornerback for the Packers. I think they're going to try and get Odell's head early and often, try and get him out of his groove before he even gets in it. I think the Packers are going to win this one.
Cool. All right. Well, that game, along with many other games this week, are going to be very interesting. We get to talk all about that all over again when we see you again next week. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Bernazian. I'm joined with my boys, Brian Atkinson and Sean Grassi. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.